Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Wednesday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Ellen, hard at work on the tropical island of St. Bart's, and you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Dennis, coming to you from the beautiful North Shore of Long Island, and you are once more tuned in to that international phenomenon, Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers.
And Sister.
You know, Ellen is our international connection. She's living on the edge down there.
Definitely on the edge.
Not just our international connection, our international phenomenon.
Oh,
there you go.
How sweet.
There you go. What's the weather like in St. Bart's today? It's 106 in Dallas.
It's hot and hazy. It's about 90.
Oh, it's sweater weather.
Very hazy.
How's the seaweed?
There's a lot of it, actually, which is a shame. But it comes and goes. Sometimes it's on the eastern side of the island. Sometimes it's on the northern beaches. Sometimes, it sort of moves around with the currents.
When can you count on it being completely gone? Usually
in the winter. It's kind of odd. It's seasonal. There's more now than there is. Luckily, high season, when the most of the tourists are here, there seems to be a lot less than there is now. I don't know if anybody can ever do anything about it. Somebody here did an experiment of using it to make concrete or something, which seemed to be hopeful. So who knows?
Well, with that, welcome everyone to episode 486.
Wow.
What do we have to talk? What's happening in Ellen world? What's happening in Dennis world? What's the news?
Well, we are busy getting ready for LDI. Not to skip over this year, but some of our team went down to New Orleans earlier this week, and they came back just so jazzed and so excited about all the opportunities for LDI 2027 down there that we're really getting excited about that.
I don't know if it's still true, but I had to fly through New Orleans a few years ago twice. I had to do a plane change there. So I get off my plane, and I'm running through the airport to get to my next plane, and I see a margarita station. And I stop, and I go, "Can I take that margarita on the airplane?" He goes, "Oh, hell yeah." So he makes me a margarita, and as his word was, I ran to the other airline. I got on the airline with my margarita. Then a couple days later, I'm flying back through there, and he sees me coming. And he makes me a margarita so I can take it the other direction to my other plane and get back to Dallas. So maybe that's what it is. They have visited the Margarita-To-Go Man in the airport.
I'm surprised you could take it on the plane because they don't let you open your own alcohol there. But maybe because you bought it in the airport, it's okay.
Well, I'm not opening my own alcohol.
No, I understand.
He's also a Lumen brother, and we have special privileges.
Got it.
Well, anything happening up in TV world, Dennis?
You know what? I actually, the reason that I wasn't with my family last week, my Lumen family, is that I was on a vacation up north toward Canada. So I don't know if you follow it or not, but the air was so terrible in New York and Pennsylvania and the middle Atlantic states. You can imagine what we were enduring on the Canadian-New York border, where we spent most of our time in Buffalo.
Where were you?
Primarily Buffalo.
Okay, and how bad was it?
My son's in a rowing camp there, and so we took him up, and then we enjoyed some sights around Corning and Finger Lakes, and came down, spent a night at Penn State, where I did my graduate work. I hadn't been there in a number of years, so I thought
you're a Nittany Lion. Who knew?
Yeah. But if you've ever been to that area, the Nittany Mountains there are high, and State College and University Park is in the bowl of those mountains.
Right.
The air was just unbelievably terrible.
Oh, that's a shame.
And we spent one whole day in our hotel because the air was so hazardous. They were warning people not to go out. It was a week of relaxing.
Well, there you go. Ellen, I think you have our first question.
I do. How do you make sure that LEDs have the proper CRI to make skin tones look natural on stage or on television? Asks Susan from Santa Fe. I think that's an interesting question because not all LEDs are born the same, apparently. And I don't know, Dennis, Steve, is there a certain like Kelvin you're looking for to make them a proper? And
Well, I was a little thrown by the question because CRI is very different from color temperature. And a lot of people get it confused. Even as you said, you were mentioning Kelvin. CRI is not measured in Kelvin whatsoever. It's actually measured in an R number, and it's very complicated to explain. And I would need to phone a friend, and that friend would be Stan Kay, our resident scientist at Light Talk, who could go on and on and on about the differences between CRI and the metric that the Illuminating Engineering Society uses, which is TM30. And then you have to go into that, what was that old definition we were taught and probably have taught others, Steve, about the black body reflector? It gets crazier and crazier. But there's a certain validity to what Susan says. Essentially, CRI measures color accuracy, very different from color temperature. And the color rendering index, which is CRI, it measures the accuracy of true colors compared to natural sunlight. And it's usually done on a scale of 0 to 100, with the higher numbers, let's say in the 90s, ensuring a good, vibrant, accurate look, while numbers in the 70s can really just wash out color totally. And it's one of those things that how can Susan make sure she has the proper CRI? Well, by the lights. The only way you really know what the CRI is by checking the specifications and the photometrics on the fixtures themselves. And even if you go to Home Depot and buy bulbs for your house, you'll see them listed under CRI measurements. And if you want something that's decent and proper, you should never use a CRI that's under 80. 80 to 90 is kind of the measurement for a decent CRI.
so the higher the number, the better.
Correct.
So like fluorescent, which is like 50, is not good for anything.
If you look at the ETC site, what I think I saw, and they can always call me up and beat me over the head, so maybe I'm misunderstanding. If I look at their color source line, they rate that as greater than 80. And if you look at their luster line, they list that as greater than 90.
Okay.
So both of those are very good lights for rendering color. An LED has a tendency to mix colors on a narrow spectrum. You know, it's what Dennis says, it's not sunlight, which has everything, every bit of color in it. You have a chip in there that is a blue chip, and they try to take that blue chip and they try to manipulate that with a coating, and they try to produce other colors. And the problem is with the lower quality chips, again, unlike natural sunlight, which it gives you a very smooth spectrum of visible light, the budget LEDs are missing the middle and the longer wavelengths. And the middle and the longer wavelengths would be that orange, yellow, red. And you notice now that a lot of people are making better quality LEDs with 2 red chips in them. So you can get better rendition, but you pay for that.
And that's really what you're paying for. And in the red line, there's what's called the R9 value, which averages highly saturated colors and true to life skin tones. But you pay more for that R9, which is a saturated red value. The reality is what you pay for. You know, how would our friend Susan know? Well, as I said, she has to look at the specifications, but you're paying a lot more for something that will make skin tones look natural on stage. You know, we're so used to it from years past because that's what tungsten halogen and quartz lighting would do. And, you know, there was that old number, 3200 Kelvin was the tungsten number But I challenged anybody years ago to pull a 3200 lamp out of a box and actually have it be 3200. The
Right.
numbers were always off. They were never really accurate. So when people say, oh, well, you have 3200 tungsten or 5600 daylight, again, those numbers are just guesstimations. But
Well, back in the day, someone told me, I think it was Westinghouse, and I'm sure it was some tongue-in-cheek involved. So I'm not saying this is historically accurate, but I asked about that. And the salesman said, yeah, we pull 1,000 lamps down, we burn them all, and we get an average for lamp life, we get an average for color, and we take those numbers to our secretary, and she just points at the one that is the best because she knows good from bad. So we go there, we tested it, and our expert said that was the average. And again, I'm sure it's tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think it was that much tongue-in-cheek. I think there's some
But
magic
again,
going on there.
you can get the better color rendering if you pay for it. As you mentioned earlier, Ellen, fluorescent fixtures would be terrible. Well, yes, unless you buy one that has a better color rendering index.
Right.
Years ago, I used to go to Home Depot when I was working for a client that had no money and said, we can't afford good lights. And a lot of times the affiliates want to have fluorescent light because they're only interested in a soft wash. Well, you have companies out there like Kinaflow, for example, that manufactures their own lamps. They're at that time fluorescent lamps, now LEDs. And the fluorescent lamps that they manufactured, which were called the True Match line, had pretty decent CRI and color rendering index. What I would do is go to Home Depot, buy cheap, crappy shop lights for $15, not use the fluorescent lamps that have a terrible CRI, and just put Kinaflow lamps in them that had a better CRI. And again, it's all cost. I'll pick on, since you brought up ETC, and we always pick on Bobby Hale anyway, it's no secret that I favor high-end systems, and I love the fixtures, and I do a lot of work with Bobby. I buy Lone Star fixtures a lot. However, maybe people don't realize the color rendering index of a Lone Star is god-awful. As we said earlier, you want to have a color rendering index of something in the 90s, with 95 being ideal. The color rendering index of a Lone Star is 75, under the 80 number that should be the baseline. However, that being said, the Lone Star has an internal TM30 color enhancing fixture on the color wheel. That boosts the CRI to just above 85 when you need better color accuracy. But again, it's not perfect. However, the fixture, the Lone Star itself, it comes with other things that are more important. It's small size. It's relatively inexpensive price. If you want to buy a moving light that's a profile light like a Lone Star, you can get that for $3,500, $4,000, as opposed to a $7,000 or $8,000 comparable fixture that has better CRI. And again, if Susan is looking to enhance the skin tones on the stage, she might be stuck with whatever fixtures she has. All of that being said, when I'm getting Lone Stars, and most of the TV studios these days are just filled with video walls and video floors. So if you're talking optimum color rendering index, does the fixture really matter when you have all of that color pollution all around? I mean, let's face it, the native color temperature of LED screens can go as high as 9,000 Kelvin, sometimes as high as 12,000 Kelvin. So there's so much pollution all around. How do you maintain decent color rendering index?
It's interesting because sometimes like avant-garde theater or opera directors will opt for really strange lighting fixtures, mercury vapor. And that must be like a CRI of about 30, and people really look awful. But that's the effect they're going for.
Again, it's the mood that you're going for.
Yep.
And as I said, the CRI is a measurement of accuracy, not to be confused with color temperature,
Right.
which is used to describe a visual appearance or mood. And again, going back to the Lone Star, I can play with the color temperature to boost the quality to get it into the more natural colors that we want. And whether you're using a color temperature that's very warm in the 2,000 or 3,000 range, or very cool in the 5,000 or 6,000 range, you can cheat it with the color temperature. But going back to what Steve said earlier, if the fixture that you're buying only has RGB, red, green, blue, light sources, LEDs in the fixture, it's going to be harder to make that blend. I would always recommend going with a fixture that has RGBA, an amber chip, and a W. And that gives you a better chance to mix something that has a better CRI, because you're mixing the colors. And in television, it's very important. But again, you're being polluted by the video walls. A lot of this has just been the quality and the control has dissipated over the years because they've gotten away from film. And despite what we say about, we're going out filming, nobody's filming. Nobody films anymore. They use digital or some non-mylar acetate medium, not film as we know it from that famous company that used to be called Kodak. And when you were dealing with film, you really needed to pay closer attention to your CRI and your color temperature. Now, there's so many ways to cheat it electronically, it's not that crucial anymore.
I bet you, if we sit down and we will pick the engineering team at ETC, and we're going to pick the engineering team at Verilight, and there's some others out there, I bet you they can make a light that would just blow your socks off. But no one wants to pay for it. Designers want all these features on their lights, all this ability for the light to manufacture. Then you manufacture this perfect light, and someone says, "Can you sell it for half that price?"
And there's the problem.
And the lights that are out there right now, many of them are good enough. They're simply good enough for what we do.
Well, do you actually in your live theater projects at SMU or wherever you are, Steve? Do you actually notice the difference that much in CRI?
No, but I notice the difference between color source and between luster. I do notice that because I'm looking for very, very, very specific things.
Sure.
And it's not like one is super great. One, it's. They're both crescent wrenches. They both do a good job at what they do. And you have to understand what the difference between them is.
We've talked about this on the show with using like the color picker or the color mixer in a console where we want, dial up Roscoe 64. And the Roscoe 64 in that luster doesn't look at all like 64. But if you dial it up in a Chauvet fixture or something else, it looks totally different from the luster. And a lot of that has to do with the color rendering index.
Right.
Sure.
Something else that Dennis mentioned before, the TM30 index. What makes that more precise than the CRI?
The CRI, and don't quote me on the numbers, but when they're calculating those figures, they base it on 9 or 10 pastel color chips that they use to do the calibration. The TM30 uses about 100 different color chips. So the calibrations that they use are much more minute and finely tuned.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's an IES, Illuminating Engineering Society. And as I said, our good friend Stan Kay could probably go on for hours about that.
Well, someday we'll have to bring him back as a guest expert. All right. So, Dennis, I believe you have the next question.
Okay. I think we've beat that into the ground. The question is, I have graduated with my theater degree in design and technology and want to market myself in the professional world as a programmer. How should I do that? And what do you look for when hiring your programmers? Keep up the great Light Talk advice. I love the interviews. Thank you in advance. And this is from Brian in Philadelphia. Well, it's interesting because I work with a lot of different programmers. And years ago, when I first started out using the first Varilights with the VL2s, was my first foray into the world. Varilight would provide programmers for me because not that many people were trained. And as the fixtures started developing and more fixtures hit the market, and then all of the other lighting companies hopped on the bandwagon. So you had different abilities to control moving lights. And then once everybody could control moving lights on ETC consoles, the training is a lot easier. And I find that there's so many people out there who are now capable of programming on an Ion or an EOS or Apex, that it's not as difficult to find good programmers. But usually all of the programmers I use they still come to me through recommendations. There are programmers that will reach out and ask if they can be considered for a project. But sometimes it has to be a very small project because the risks are great. I wouldn't take a guy with me who I didn't know or didn't come highly recommended on a Super Bowl event or a live broadcast or performance. But I have done many interviews with programmers, and for a novice, he needs to come up with the resume of things like, who he's worked with, people I know, where have they worked, and then, the usual things that I would be interested in knowing, like what are the challenging lighting design projects. We've had on the show Chris Lose, who has done just about everything. Well, if I couldn't find a programmer anywhere and my usual programmers were unavailable, I would call Chris Lose immediately because I know he knows what he's doing. He has the experience. More importantly, he's a friend I know. And a lot of times in these environments, you want to have a programmer with you who you can work with and understands what you do. An individual programmer is going to have his own aesthetic. He's going to have his own strategies for creating mood and atmosphere. But too often you don't have time to talk with the programmer. So you need to develop that rapport. And if I'm hiring somebody new as a programmer, I need to know a lot of things about them and how they handle the budget constraints and situations where they had tight deadlines. It's very easy to find out immediately the experience, like the technical skills, for example. Do they know computer-aided design software? Do they have a background in WYSIWYG or even the technical aspects of fixtures? Do they stay up with the latest trends in technology and the type of lighting fixtures? I mean, designers don't always have the ability to stay on top of the moving lights and the fixtures out there that require extensive programming. So you need to rely on a programmer to say, hey, you don't want to use that XYZ light. You want to use the David Jacques Drone Focus Deluxe instead. So you're relying on a programmer to have a lot of experience behind him to help you solve the problems that you know you're going to have. And
If they're going to send out a resume or a CV, they would want to list what consoles they're proficient in using.
100%. Years ago, when as I said, I would hire programmers who I know or have worked with me, but I would always ask, what is your weapon of choice? Because if I'm renting the whole package and I rent a hog and they only know MA, then I've got a problem. And these days, and I'm sure you're doing it at SMU, Steve, designers coming out of schools are being trained to be proficient on several consoles because that increases their chances for work.
And that is hard.
It is very hard.
That is hard. It's hard on two levels. One level, it's hard for a university to have an ETC console, a Grand MA console, a Varilight console, a Hog console. It's whatever you want to pick it. Just pick 3 out of the half dozen that are around the planet. That is an expense. It's also very difficult because your master electrician, who is well versed in, let's say, MA, doesn't really want to take the time, nor should he or she take the time to learn 2 new consoles. That's a difficult task at hand. What we're trying to do is we're adding a programmer into the mix this year. And specifically, we're doing that for 2 reasons. One, we're trying to get the students looking at the stage and listening to the director and not looking down at the screen and looking at their fingers and trying to figure out how to do something. Or, and there's no villains here, pulling out their phone and kind of Googling, how do I do this on the console? Because there's a lot of stuff it can do. So we're trying to open up, let them be designers, bring a programmer in who will eventually take that student, not necessarily on that show, but will take that student on to some other student show, and then the programmer will teach that student the console over the course of 4 or 5 nights. They're not going to make them an expert, but they're going to see how problem solving happens, how you set a console up, different ways to think about things. So we're trying to do that training. I want, for me, if I want a programmer, and I don't think I've only programmed a couple of my own shows in 27 years now. I have a programmer on everything I do except at the university. The thing I'm looking for is everything Dennis is talking about. I'm also looking for someone who is pleasant to work with and is a team player and is not going to sigh because they think I'm asking for something that's silly. I want someone who just sits there and says, okay, we can do that 3 different ways. Let me show you 3 different ways to do it, and you pick. I'm looking for that professional who is a professional, who is not ego-driven, but is driven by a skill level that is really quite good and quite high, and confident in who they are as a programmer, as a designer perhaps, and just as a human being. So I'm looking for a pleasant person to work with. And if they're really great, someone I can go to dinner or lunch with and enjoy the show, enjoy the experience, as opposed to kind of slugging through it. I was talking to a couple programmers and who are serious programmers, not the programmers I'm trying to hire, who are on that level that I can't afford, or the level of shows that I simply don't do. And they said, their mission is to stay 1 or 2 steps ahead of the designer, to be able to look at what the designer is doing, understand where he or she is going, and always be ahead of them, and always have the ability. They're just good at what they do. And one of these people, actually, Grand MA, put a console in their apartment. And there's a console that this person has that's just a loaner, so they can keep working on it. And right beside it was setting a hog. So they had 2 consoles that were on permanent lease to them for no cost because of the types of clients they were handling in the shows they were doing. So in a perfect world, that's the programmer I want.
Let me ask you this. When you're training programmers, is it better to train a programmer who's a designer or a programmer who's a technician?
Well, we're in the business of training designers here because there's schools that have much better programs if you want to be a technician. But it's important that you understand from a technical point of view what the light is capable of doing, and it's important that you understand what the console is capable of doing, and you learn how to work with those two tools. It's a dance, because there's a point that you're going to start programming things into your console as a student that's never going to be done at the university, or you'll never have the capability of doing what you want because that equipment's not there. So you're always working in a world of previs to make something happen on stage. I mean, the people I've noticed who are truly programmers are very fast on their feet. They don't need to be told twice. They don't look at you and say that's not possible, or they don't look at you and say, what do you mean by that? I mean, they are the other half of your brain just sitting there cranking it out, and they're very, very good at what they do. And I think that's an achievable skill. You just have to have the equipment, and you have to have the ability to do it. I mean, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. If you look at some of the stuff that's coming out of high school students who are using pre-visualization, and they have their PC or their Mac running the console software. I mean, this is an achievable goal. It's like anything else, like learn to play the guitar. You just have to spend some time with it, and you have to do something every day. I'm trying to increase my Vectorworks skills, and there's things that I don't believe that I'll ever need in the world of Vectorworks. But if you kind of every couple days go, well, let's just see what this tool does. I don't think I'm ever going to use it, but let's just see what it does. You're increasing your knowledge, and you're just getting better because you're understanding what the program's capable of.
Yeah, I'm always in a quandary, and I've worked with programmers who are highly technical, who their fingers fly across those consoles, and they're able to program things that I could never even dream of coming up with. But I also work with programmers who come from a design sensibility, and they're feeding me artistic suggestions and design changes that help the end product look better. And to try and find somebody with both of those abilities is that's the special programmer that you want.
Well, I mean, I think if you have a great programmer, and that great programmer can be, very, very young.
Yeah.
Why isn't that programmer your associate? Because they are feeding you design ideas. It's not fair for me to take credit for their ideas. But if we can blend those ideas and give them credit, you're the associate on the show, and you happen to be the programmer also.
Well, I think 2 weeks ago when we announced the nominations for the Primetime Emmys, some of those shows had lighting teams of 6, 7, 8 people. 2 or 3 of them were strictly programmers who are getting the credit and being nominated as lighting designers who are programmers because, whether that show is Dancing with the Stars or the Oscars or the Tonys or the Grammys or Halftime Show with Bad Bunny, those programmers are designing right alongside with Bob Dickinson or Al Gurdon or whoever the lighting designer of record is. And I think the design skill set is really important to have. It's not like the old days where I'd go to a place and I say, I need to bring a programmer. Oh, we got a guy here that runs the lighting board. He can be your programmer, and the guy's there operating a piano board. You need somebody with not only training and technical knowledge, but an artistic sensibility.
Well, you need someone also who can save you when all hell breaks loose and some massive change is taking place.
In the last year or so since I've been part of the Lumen family, we've had, I don't know, maybe a half dozen programmers on. One that comes to mind is Caleb Franke, who was a very young programmer and didn't, if you remember, he didn't have any academic training, but when he spoke and talked about the work he did, and if you looked at photos of the work he did, he is an excellent designer with a strong artistic sensibility.
Well, as I remember, he took on a console that he didn't know.
Correct.
And spent 3 or 4 months just living with that console.
But, the other thing that goes along with the artistic sensibility and the technical knowledge, and I don't want to sound discriminatory toward youth, but a lot of times you need to have the experience and the techniques that come with age and experience, like dealing with setbacks and dealing with revisions and dealing with difficult directors and having to, as we've said in the past, it's important to be able to adapt to all the unexpected changes and working with difficult clients. I sometimes wonder if younger designers out of school are going to have that ability to pivot as a programmer.
Do you have like a list of approved programmers at Lighting Design Group?
Yes, we do. But again, we have 25 designers on staff, and 6 or 7 of them are doing high-profile projects all the time, and those designers have the teams of people that they like working with. But and depending on where I go, if I'm doing a job at NBC, there would be somebody that NBC has on staff that I could choose, or ABC might have on staff, or people that I will just take with me. I took somebody with me to the Super Bowl who works in a studio in Chicago, and he was a damn good programmer. I said, hey, you want to go on the road? You experience people at different sites, sometimes just by accident, and they become a go-to person. You always have to have a handful of people, Ellen, because it's that old adage. If I call Ellen every time and she's always available, then I have to question why she isn't working if she's that good.
Right. The other thing is that it's interesting that programming is very well paid, for one thing, on a high level. And a lot of people now, they make that a choice. It's not a stepping stone necessarily to becoming a designer.
Well, especially if you're an adrenaline junkie. I mean, wow. When the shit hits the fan and you're on a high-profile project and it's a live show and everything is going crazy all at once, the programmer's fingers are the ones that count the most. And I've had directors say to me, Dennis, what the hell's going on? I need to be able to be the buffer between what's going on and the programmer, because I need to rely on him totally to make sure everything is working properly. Because I certainly can't do it.
Well, also with my background in theater and dance, sometimes what's happening with me is I'm making it too complex. I'm thinking it through too hard.
Good point, Steve.
And the programmer's looking at it going, we can simplify this and get exactly what you want. So I'm paying for that education and that experience and problem solving. I had a friend who was called in to spend the day on a Broadway show, and this was serious designers, and they could not solve a lighting problem with the moving lights, and they had worked on it for a while. These are not jamokes, nor was their programmer. But this person sat down and said, you're overthinking this. There's a simple way to do this. And they were like, how did you do that? Do it every day of the week in rock and roll, because we're thinking about it differently than you're thinking about it. You're trying to make the console do something in a really weird way.
I think when we were interviewing, I think it was Ben Stanton, and he was talking about a project, he gave a great deal of credit to David Arch, his programmer, who I've worked with as he's an excellent programmer. But David offered up solutions to Ben Stanton that made the whole project work better, coming from the program standpoint. Anyway, you're listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
Is sponsored by...
It's a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. How a stagehand chooses a new flashlight. Choosing a flashlight isn't shopping. It's a sacred ritual handed down through generations of sleep-deprived stagehands who have somehow still not found the right flashlight. Brightness. A proper stagehand flashlight should have 2 settings. The "is this thing on" setting, and "congratulations, you have accidentally recreated the surface of the sun." Beam color. Red preserves your night vision. Green preserves absolutely nothing except your reputation as that weird flashlight guy. Blue summons confused electricians who will immediately ask, "Where did you find a blue flashlight?" Beam pattern. Choose a smooth flood beam capable of illuminating spike tape, a wrench you just dropped, the page of a prompt book you just suddenly find you need. Avoid laser focus beams. They're only useful for highlighting mistakes from 200 feet away. Which brings me to battery life. A proper flashlight should last 3 tech rehearsals. one genuine emergency, the entire director's notes session, which somehow outlives several lifetimes in at least one relationship. Durability. A quality flashlight should survive falling off the catwalk, being run over by a forklift, spending 6 months at the bottom of a road case, being borrowed for just a minute by the new guy. Noise. The switch should be completely silent. A loud click during a blackout is the theater's equivalent of setting off a car alarm in the library. Everyone hears it. Everyone knows it was you. The pocket clip. Absolutely essential. Without one, every flashlight follows the same mysterious migration route. Pocket. Floor. Orchestra pit. Chain bag. Alternate dimension. No one knows why. No one has ever recovered one from that final destination. Advanced features. Look for a flashlight with a magnet strong enough to stick to steel scenery. Weak enough not to collect every stray screw, washer, and socket within a 5-foot radius. Waterproof construction because someone is absolutely going to set their water bottle on the dimmer rack. A low battery indicator is also nice. It gives you a full 5 minutes to ignore it before the light dies at the worst possible moment. And the final test? Before buying, ask yourself one simple question. If this flashlight accidentally turns on during Hamlet's ghost scene, will the audience think it was symbolism? If the answer is yes, you've gone too bright. If the answer is no, congratulations, you found a Stagehand flashlight. Just remember, the best flashlight isn't the brightest. It's the one that isn't currently missing, borrowed, locked in someone else's Pelican case, or somehow wedged inside a moving light. This has been a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s.
Well, thank you, Steve. We need to find some flashlights that are being sold from one of the many companies that Light Talk has advertised over the years. And I think also we should probably have, in addition to the flashlight that stagehands use, what about that laser pointer? Something to think about, Steve.
I think it is. I like that a lot. I think there's probably some company in West Texas that makes them.
Yeah.
And you know what? I carry a flashlight in my bag. I actually carry 2 of them. One's usually burned out or batteries are dead. But I always rely on an electrician in a studio who has that laser, razor sharp, narrow beam flashlight because I can't see the damn channel numbers and the information that are tagged on the lights way up in the grid.
Your cell phone has a flashlight in it.
Not bright enough for that. You need like a really point source.
Oh, it can be pretty bright. You can adjust the brightness.
Let me give you a little bit of advice. If you do carry 2 flashlights and one of them has burned out batteries, that's the one you loan out to the new guy. Because the new guy takes it and he'll bring it back and say, Dennis, thanks. Listen, I put some new batteries in your flashlight for you. So, you're saving money right there. Do you hear that? I hear the distant sound of drunken monkeys arguing about voter fraud, paired with the occasional thud of iguanas surrendering to gravity. That can only mean one thing again. It is time for Let's Talk About. And today's topic is, how do I start a career as an educator?
Wow.
Well, I think that's an interesting topic because,
Wow.
No, but it always amazes me how many professional lighting designers teach, which I think is great. It's great to give back. It's great to be part of the academic community. It's great to share your knowledge. It's interesting that people are interested in this as a career option. I think it's nice that the universities bring in the professionals because it adds a great, additional aspect to the teaching roster. So I don't know, what do you guys think? You've both done some teaching at universities.
It's very interesting. I'm sure that you guys listen to our good friend and podcast colleague Ethan Steinmill's show, Artistic Finance. And I think he was a student of yours, wasn't he, Steve, years ago?
Yes, and Ethan is a person I'm thinking of, so I'm anxious to see
Interesting, because
what direction you take with this.
I didn't know that, but he was the first person I thought about when the topic came up, because if you listen to his shows for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, he's just taken on a position full-time teaching, and it's a whole new world for him. And a lot of his shows, although his shows are geared more toward the business end and guiding people on their finances, listening to him talk about his experience as a teacher is quite fascinating, because he's done a total turnaround in his career. And he and I talked briefly when he left New York, because he used to work on a lot of projects for Lighting Design Group as well. And I, right out of graduate school, I taught for about a year and a half. And I'll tell you, it was the most challenging thing I think I ever did. And I found it very rewarding, to the point that I would occasionally go back and teach part-time. I taught part-time at Carnegie for a couple of years, broadcast lighting, and I did master classes at many universities. But what I found is that in order for me to teach somebody, I really needed to learn and to research and to go back and teach myself what I was about to teach all these young minds, to make sure I wasn't wrong. You have such an incredible responsibility as a teacher. And it always concerned me that I was saying the right thing and imparting the correct knowledge. And half the time I thought, I don't know what I'm doing myself. How can I teach somebody else? It can be very rewarding, but also extremely challenging.
Well, I think the thing about Ethan is also, if you listen to those podcasts, he argues that you need a multiple income strains. So yes, you need to do dance, opera, theater, rock and roll, television, and maybe you also need to teach, so you have multiple incomes coming in. So he sees that as a game plan for, financial success. I think if you're going to try to start teaching, just from a practical point of view, I think you need to think about how you are marketing yourself and what you're telling people about you. Because probably if you're coming from the professional world, you think a resume is a pretty good thing. And I think the resume is misunderstood, particularly when it comes to education. We think about our resume, and it's a quick summary of what we've done, our educational and professional experiences. And it has broken into sections that deal with education, professional, volunteer, skills, training, certificates, awards, maybe. And that's not what a university is looking for. I think when you send a resume to a director, they look at your resume very differently than a university does. Usually a resume is an entry-level individual, and it's only going to be a page or two. And it's like, just the facts, ma'am. And that's not what a university is looking for. That doesn't mean that you're lacking in skill. It means you're lacking in marketing. And a university is looking for what they call a CV, a curriculum vitae. And that's an itemized list of everything. That's your education, your publications, your accomplishments, your notable projects, awards, honors, achievements, your professional experiences, who you've worked with, what theaters you've worked in, your affiliations with the union. It's one document that can be, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can you imagine how many pages it would be if it were Ken Billington? It could be 60 pages long. So in this one document, you're trying to sum up your whole career in detail, and you're focusing it on the academic side. You're also focusing on your professional side. So for someone at an entry level, 2 or 3 pages maybe. But if you've been out working for any amount of time and you're putting everything in there that you've done, you could easily have 10, 12 pages without thinking about it. And by having all that information, they're also seeing what you can bring to the classroom as a teacher. Oh, they do have a background in television doing this, this, and this. Oh, they've done 17 musicals. Oh, they've done this. They've worked in outdoor drama, so they maybe have some connections there that can help students get placed. So academics love that CV, and they go over it time and time and time again, and they want to question you about it. So look at CVs and just understand the market you're looking into. That's their base standard. If you send a CV to a director in a theater, they would think you've lost your mind. Why are you sending me all this information? But universities want it all. This came into us as a question. So I think it's perfectly acceptable for you who sent this question to us to contact your teachers at your university and say, I would like to see your CV. And look at the CV, not just of the lighting designer, I assume you're a lighting designer, but look at the CV of the set designer and the costume designer. And if there's a director you worked with, look at his or her CV. So you need to see examples of this so you can see what's being put in there. And I think that CV also helps explain to the university a little bit who you are as a person. And, what gets you out of bed every morning? What is really exciting? And it gives them a chance to see also what you can bring into the classroom by the kind of experience, the real world experience you come in. So I think it's always hard because someone, goes through a theater program and says, well, I'm graduating next week and I'm going to go teach college. Well, good luck with that, and I hope you find a job. But what you're going to find is you're probably lacking some real world experience when they start looking at your CV. And it's not that you're a bad designer. It's just that your world is a little too small. So they're having to think about what are you bringing into the classroom that's going to help the students. And then you look at these other CVs. Oh, this is why they taught this class, because they have this experience in it. What can you teach? And that CV is helping explain what you can teach also.
Do you think there's a certain number of years out of graduate school before you should apply?
No, I think it varies with everyone. What I tell other students is I think you're going to have 5 or 6 years of some real world experience to get into the universities you want to get into. There might be a small school somewhere, and there's nothing wrong with small schools, but there might be a school that is willing to take a bigger risk with someone who has not a lot of experience. A smaller school might be willing to take someone on with the idea that they're going to grow with the program. But I think, I'm not trying to be flippant. I really am not. I think if you're applying for a job at Carnegie Mellon, you have to realize they're perfectly happy to look at your resume, but you also have to understand what is the pool of people who you are competing against. And I think that's where it's difficult. I had a friend who applied to a fairly prominent school, and what was interesting was he actually had 2 Broadway shows as an associate. So you would think this is kind of a slam dunk. And he did not get the job. And he didn't get an interview. And when we were talking about it, they shared with him who had interviewed. And I mean, they were heavy hitters. They were heavy hitters who had Tony Awards. And you just never know. You never know. He did get a job at another school, and it's a perfectly fine school, but he was the head of the class when they were looking at his CV.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess some designers like the stability of a teaching position. And you can get, I guess, benefits. I don't know. You get a retirement track.
Well,
what
sure.
do you get?
You're looking at a retirement
Yep.
plan. What you really get is a home. Before I started teaching, the last tour I did, I spent 50 weeks on the road. That's a 5 and a 0. And I had just gotten married, and I thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? Can you imagine these people who went down to New Zealand for 3 years to work on a film called Lord of the Rings? So, I mean, you talk to some of our friends who have heavy careers in the industry, and, there's a reason they have associates and assistants. They want to design the thing, but they don't want to have to be on the road with it 24 hours a day making it happen. Even if you're away, something lightweight, lightweight is maybe 15 to 30 weeks. That's a long time to be away from home. That's a long time to live in a bus and go to the laundromat and eat cold pizza. And also, you're missing other jobs because you're doing this. You can't be in two places at the same time. So teaching, you get to do what you really love to do. You get to kind of cherry pick the professional gigs you want. Yeah, there's an insurance plan and there's a health plan, but I think it's your home with your family. And at some point, even if your family's a pit bull, you want to be home with your family and not on the road forever. So I think being on the road is a young person's game, under 30.
I think a good teacher, though, man, what a rewarding career and how special that can be. We've had artists on this show who are spectacular designers. Ben Stanton, again, who I mentioned earlier, and Justin Townsend, and Jane Cox, who was interviewed on this show. And the reason I picked those three people is in their interviews, they all credited their teacher, Penny Remsen, from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, I believe. And I actually reached out to Penny a few times saying, hey, what is the special sauce that you have, that you've created these incredible designers who are multiple Broadway designers who have Tony Awards and accolades? And I've asked Penny to come on the show so that she can tell us what it is that she's done to create these fabulous designers who are extremely successful. And hopefully that will happen in the not too distant future, because the teaching profession is so special, and those that go into it, the rewards of seeing their students succeed are so high. It's just unfortunate that the monetary rewards aren't as great.
Well, I think if you're going to be successful, I think you have to learn when to hover and when to step away. You have to let that student make mistakes and make discoveries and have successes and have failures. And you just can't design the show for them. You can mentor them, you can make suggestions, but at some point you just have to say, you're in the captain's chair and it's all right. And you have the skills to do this job, and you need to believe in yourself as much as I believe in you. And, you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room when you have talented students in the room with you.
Yeah, and my favorite line about mistakes is something someone said to me once, which is, save everything that I tell you is a mistake. It will be a solution to a problem in the future.
That's certainly true.
Well, I hope everyone that wants to teach does so and can share their expertise with the next generation. It's a wonderful thing to do. So, Steve has our last question of the day.
All right, this is name and location withheld by request. And you will realize why when I read the question. I am on deck to light our first show of the season in October. My last show did not go so well. It was also my first. I am a rising sophomore. In fact, my teacher said I had achieved the big three of lighting: flattened actors, unwanted shadows, and oversaturated color. Any suggestions? I know I can do better.
Get them that CRI.
No, get Gene Rosenthal's book, The Magic of Light. Okay, so let's just look at this down the line. Flattened actors. Probably you've used way too much front light. You've probably used single source lighting. It's coming from one direction. It's like a follow spot. It could be one source and side light and be ugly too. But you have created these one-sided shadows everywhere. Maybe you put your fixtures at low angles, and maybe you've got this kind of Bela Lugosi Frankenstein look and a big shadow behind them. Maybe you've used narrow beam fixtures, ERSs, when you should have used something a little bit softer. So that concentrated beam of an ERS is going to be really sharp. It's going to have more defined shadows than, say, a Fresnel will. Maybe you're not pulling the actors away from the backdrops or the scenery. So all of these things can be solved by using multiple direction of light coming into stage. Yes, front light's important, side light's important, low side light, high side light, back light, and maybe top light at times, but multiple angles. So maybe this next time up, think about the audience sitting on three sides. Even though it's a proscenium show, think about the audience on three sides and what are they seeing. So start lighting it from that perspective. Cross lighting and backlighting is really going to help you with the shadow thing. If nothing else, go to the internet right now and look up 3-point lighting. So you have a key light, a fill light, and a backlight in there. And look at that and look at what it can do, as opposed to, that one light that got you when you were getting your driver's license made. And as far as saturated colors go, there's nothing wrong with saturated colors if it's appropriate. But maybe you're using color a little too freely. And maybe you're using red, purple, and green from the front of house. And maybe that's distorting the skin tones and it's clashing with the costume design, the set design. There are no rules, but maybe you need to think about some pale tints, maybe some warm and cool pale colors, and save those really deep saturation colors for maybe the side light or backlight. You're right. You can do better. And you're a sophomore, so this suggests a rising sophomore. So that suggests to me that by some miracle, they gave you a show to do in your freshman year. That's great. So clearly they think you can do it. Clearly they believe in you, and you just made some rookie mistakes, and you're going to learn from those, and you're going to get with that teacher and say, hey, I think I've solved the problem of flat actors. This is what I'm thinking about doing. So when you go back and you're meeting with your teacher and you're saying, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing, I looked at this, what do you think? That's also going to suggest to them that you're taking it very seriously and you are trying to get your skill sets better. I don't know, Dennis, what do you do with flattened actors and horrible shadows and saturated color?
It's interesting. I had a real visceral response to this question, especially in light of our Let's Talk About with the teachers and talking about education and training of young students. Being a guy that kind of speaks from the gut to begin with, when our question came in saying any suggestions, my first suggestion would be get a new teacher. I mean, Steve, you told this person more in 5 minutes about how to properly light or ways to solve the lighting problems than apparently this sophomore's teacher has told him in a year of training. I have to play the bad guy here and say, teacher, wrong approach. For some reason or other, this sophomore is not being trained properly.
Well, let's have a commercial moment here. Ellen?
Yes.
What should this person do at LDI? What is the seminar, free or paid for? What should they do at LDI? What can this junior lighting designer get?
Well, one of the first things they should probably do is, that's a really good question. They should go to the Art of Programming probably. There's 4 sessions on that, and they could bone up their programming skills, which would probably also help them with their design skills. They should go to all the seminars that are led by leading lighting designers and ask them all of the questions, how to avoid these things. They should definitely make an appointment with Dennis Size and Steve Woods and talk about all of their issues and how to make it better, because they've got 2 brilliant teachers. They should come to the Light Talk session and ask their questions there. Do we teach actually about side light, front light, and key light? I wonder if we do. I have to look into that. I think a lot of our sessions are LED and color oriented, which would be very good for this person. And I think that LDI is an experience, not to belittle some colleges, but some people have said to us, I learned more in 4 days at LDI than I learned in 4 years in my undergraduate program. Because you really have access to so many different people.
I'm going to make another suggestion.
Yes.
If the other thing that you should consider is USITT. Good heavens. They break their show up. They have villages now. They have a lighting village, a sound village. I bet you a few days at USITT, you're going to find like-minded individuals. You are going to find classes on design. I think it's in Baltimore this March, but I would take a long, hard look at USITT. And if I were a young Steve, I think I might alternate years. I might go to LDI in the even number years and USITT in the odd number years. And if you just want to get crazy, the other place that you can get some good training at is the Southeastern Theater Conference. So there are organizations out there that are made specifically for you and are going to welcome you in, and you're going to find people just like yourself. So I would look at what the industry has to
Good
offer.
advice.
I'm going to throw one more thing out there so that I was maybe a little terse in my response. That I remember as a student at Penn State, a lot of times the teachers weren't always as forthcoming with help as you would hope. But I'll tell you, I learned, and as Ellen just said, that people learn more at 5 or 6 days at LDI than ever before. It's because they're surrounded by peers. When I was in college, I learned more from my peers, from my fellow students, from people who said, hey, you put that light at the wrong angle. You should try this the next time. Or I would just ask my fellow designers or upperclassmen, how would I do that? What did I screw up? It's a collaborative art that we do in the professional world, and the collaboration needs to start in the academic world.
Yeah, and another little commercial break for our dear friends Clifton Taylor and Mark Stanley. But at the Studio School of Design, they have some wonderful courses that might be right up their alley here.
Well, on that note, I think we should land this plane. The rocking sounds of the luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another quality morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and our brand new Instagram site at Light Talk Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and not only subscribe to our podcast, but tell all of your friends to subscribe and ask them to tell 2 of their friends. That way you'll not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
this is Snoot from the Snoot Group. You losers know the drill. Fuck with me, and I will make your lives a living hell.
Light Talk, coming to you from that beautiful French island in the Caribbean, St. Bart's. That overpopulated Long Island just east of Manhattan. The second largest state in the Union with only 1 star on its flag. And from the ethereal mind of David Jacques, who's currently playing his Mellotron somewhere in the North Pole.
Be sure to join us next week when we dive into more lighting shenanigans and serve up a fresh, piping hot casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We'll see you all next Wednesday morning when we welcome globally renowned award-winning lighting designer Tom Kenny to the big show. So stay tuned.
Yay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye from Light Talk.